I was thinking very hard about what to talk about today, and uh, I remembered for some reason all week long in my mind was running this poem that I had to learn as a child, around 7 or 8 years of age. And the poem seemed somehow to connect with what I wanted to talk about. So it was called The Spider and the Fly. And that was about a spider that was enticing a fly into its web. And the unlucky fly was lured in by flattering words and deceit to enter the web and was finally caught by the spider. The poem was a way to teach children to beware of unscrupulous people. And that's how I saw it then. But now it seems equally useful to see it as a reminder to be careful of our own inclinations or our own self-deceptions. Usually, we think deceit comes from the outside, so for us, danger means to be on guard from the actions of others. But actually, I think we're at risk from following our thoughts and playing with emotions as well, because our reality includes all things in our big mind, both negative things and positive things. And as we study the world around us, we mustn't forget that although we deal with circumstances all around us, the suffering, the unhappiness, the sorrow, the hunger and the plenty, the dissatisfaction, and the peace of mind we experience all exist as potential to be actualized within us by our own choices. So finally, the sources do not lie outside of us, the sources lie within us. If we want to exist within just the world of samsara, or the world of self-nature only, then probably playing with our thoughts and emotions can have its own benefits. For example, we discover how to survive in such a world that we create by learning how to exist with our thoughts and our emotions defining our reality. But if we want to explore Buddha nature, we have to master our relationship to thoughts and emotions and eventually go beyond them. If we want to experience the greater world of our being, to really move in it, to receive it, and to create our reality in a more intelligent way, we have to go outside and put away our playthings, our thoughts and our emotions, and bravely face who we are in the whole outside world. In other words, we have to experience who we are in a greater reality, which is who we mainly are. Believing in our thoughts seems so natural to us that we don't regard them as something to be careful of. Because after all, what other identity do we have outside of who we believe ourselves to be? But thoughts entice us eventually into a web of suffering and confusion, such as dragging us into angry realities or fearful realities or relentlessly busy realities or dissatisfied realities. And the longer we indulge in our thoughts, that is, we dally outside the web, the longer we indulge in our thoughts, the more concrete they become. And then the more we believe in them. We literally convince ourselves to step into unhappy realities by choosing to hang on to unhappy or angry thoughts, for example. We choose to deflate our self-image or to inflate it. We do it with thoughts and emotions. We willingly enter the web of entanglement through ignorance of our relationship with body, speech, and mind, and the world we live in. Because our thoughts seem so intimately to be us, it's difficult to become objective about them. So how do we see beyond thoughts and emotions? In meditation, we learn to observe thoughts without lingering in them and then let them go as fast as they come. But we do study them to understand our makeup. We understand our mental activity that we act on in the actual present we live in. So we study them to understand ourselves better. but we don't stay with them. We watch our emotions with the same mental clarity, but we don't lose ourselves in mental activity. We become more dispassionate about the relationship of thought to our self-identity. We begin to see the empty spaces around the thoughts and the feelings arising from thoughts. And we start to see the greater potentials of our self-identity can begin to emerge, a much bigger self-identity. How do we see beyond our seemingly solid self-identity, which is built on thoughts and emotions? We begin by deconstructing our thoughts and emotions in meditation. That is, we let them go, we let them pass without elaborating on them. So instead of further building identity on more new ideas, we live with them while they're present, no matter what they are. We endure the bad emotions without trying to get rid of them. We endure the horrible thoughts that run through our heads, and we refuse the allure of very attractive ones. We let them all go and look at the empty spaces that surround them. And they leave these behind, but they are quickly replaced with a new thought. So we have to be alert and pay attention to these moments. We slow thoughts and calm emotions by letting them go without increasing the time of their presence. We acknowledge their potential in our lives, but go no further than just that. In composure, we come to understand how magnificent and ultimately spotless our interior is, even with all of its negativity present. We come to understand that we're capable of great joy and compassion because of the negativity present, as well as the positive things. We're complex and simple, wide and narrow, long and short, happy and sad, and also absolutely empty of all of it. We exist within a vast network of realities, and we permeate one and experience all possibilities. How do we live with such a complicated way? We have many good guides, beginning with the beginning of practice, the Four Noble Truths. We have the precepts. We have the Six Perfections. And we have the Four Pillars of Practice, which are generosity, compassion, equanimity, and sympathetic joy. Our practices say the same thing in different ways and lead us to follow them in ways that help us in our daily lives and strengthen our spiritual individual life as well. Our practice encourages us by these guiding ways to go beyond ourselves and know the bigger being that we are. The choices, if not the immediate circumstances, are ours to command. We choose to ride our mental and emotional current of change lightly, or anchor ourselves with a thought and battle the current without let up. Sometimes clinging to a thought may be a helpful experience, but sometimes it's just a willingness to be deceived. Whatever we're made of, however we've had use of ourselves, whatever we hope for from now, it's always within us to unlock our greatest potential and make the most of this life by the choices we make, which are based on our practices. Thank you. Harvey just came in. Do I get to see everybody so I can talk to them?
Yes, let's do that.
Thank you. Hi, Harvey, come here. Yes,
Mhm.
come on. Hope you have some questions. Come on.
Okay, here we go.
For me or for Harvey?
Okay, here
Is
it
that
goes.
one Daniel? Okay.
Daniel's there. Yeah.
That's me, Jane. It's Mike Martin.
Hello, everybody.
You touched on something that I've been battling with all week while watching the news and watching government responses to this disease that's going through our world and stuff.
Mhm.
How do you, is it okay to kind of get carried away with your emotions and catch them late, or do you have to try to catch your emotions as soon as they start to get out of control, in the sense of like anger or despair or something like that? Because I worry about that, because I get mad when I see some of the stuff that's going on right now, and my brain just takes off with it, and it's like I catch it later.
Yeah. It's usually
Is that normal? Is that a normal process?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, Mike, because I think that whatever we deal with, whatever it is that's in there, is a good thing, because there's nothing that happens to us or that we encourage or do that doesn't become the fodder for our future growing. And so even if you get lost in angry thoughts, well, at some point you realize, well, this isn't helping, or it's not doing me much good, or I can't go anywhere with this, or if it on the other hand spurs you to run out and do something, well, I don't know, maybe that's a good thing. So no, I don't think any of that is wasted. I think everything we experience is fodder for the mist for the grill, grist for the mill.
So basically, it's just long as I catch myself eventually and really evaluate the situation and calm down and stuff like that, then there's hope for me still.
Of course, there is always. I mean, there's nothing that will stop you. Finally, you can't stop a plant from growing up in the. Even if you put a something on top of the plant that's growing, it will find a way around it and continue to grow up. So no, nothing will stop you from it. It's just you may spend your time dallying in angry thoughts for a long time until it either comes to your attention that nothing is changing because of it, or maybe something is. It's up to you. Everybody's life is their own, and how they view it and how they bring it to life is their choice. So nothing, whatever you experience is a good thing. You can always say, this is a good day, the right place at the right time. Who is this? Oh, Spencer.
Spencer.
Hi, Spencer.
Anybody else have questions?
Anything further? Everybody understood everything? Hi, Spencer.
Hello, Jane. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Spencer.
Daniel, how are you?
Hi, Jane. I was hoping that you could elaborate a little more on, it's often difficult. It's like not to attach to your thoughts. It's like saying, don't think of a bear. Well, now all you can think about is a bear. You know, and so a lot of what I've been practicing is trying to learn how to detach from these things, because it seems like the more we try to detach and let things go, the more we linger and hang on to them, because the act itself of trying to let it go is bringing it back. And I wonder if part of it isn't a lot like you've talked about with anger being one of the things we're referring to here, and one of the ones that often comes up. And I've talked about before how you've discussed that the importance of anger and the acceptance of that emotion and learning from that emotion. It's important that I think we learn we learn from our thoughts and our emotions, and not just try to push them away, but at the same time not attach to them. And I feel like acceptance is a really important part of the letting go. To accept our anger, to let it come back into our lives, to learn from it, to look at it, to delve into the source, and then to kind of like set it free, rather than like, oh, I don't want to think about that. I think sometimes the letting go part and the releasement from the attachment, the logistics of doing that becomes difficult. And I think that's a lot of what practice is finding your own path to letting go and figuring out how to do that within your own self, for lack of a better word.
I
That
agree
is
with
that in line? Do you agree with that, or?
I do. I definitely agree with that. However, I think everybody will find their way out of an emotional situation on their own terms, and it's a good thing because if you don't learn something from it, it's kind of like a wasted trying to avoid something in some way. Although, as I just said, nothing is wasted, so even trying to avoid something is not a wasted effort. But for example, when in my earlier days in Tassajara or in Japan, getting angry was my usual mode of operation. And but I began to see that every time I would get really angry, I could not paint or do artwork afterwards. I was like stuck in it, could not break through it. And so I started to realize that I was taking all of the creative energy that I would normally have used and blowing it out in a fit of anger of something. And so I stopped doing that just because I started to see the connection between my creativity and getting angry and throwing it out on somebody. And I think everybody will find whatever it is that they use, whether it has a good effect or a bad effect on the rest of their life. And everyone has to find that out individually. Nobody can tell you what that will be. And so when you find what hinders you, look for the emotion that's hindering. Look for the means that is causing that to slow down. And if it's talking too much, then stop talking for a while and see if that opens up a whole new area. And if it's fear, look at the fear and try to figure out why that is blocking something in your life. So you have to look at all of it. And one of the ways we do it is using the precepts as the means with which we follow our way through this swamp or this grassy plain or this climbing this incredible mountain or running down too fast, something. We have to find that out for ourselves. Nobody can tell us that, no matter what. So one of the things I said in this talk was when you start to understand the relationship of body, speech, and mind to your actual activity and your ability to act in this world, then you start to look more for the source inside than looking for it outside.
Thank you, Jane. That's very helpful. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Daniel has a question in the chat.
Oh, where is it?
And the chat is right over here. Where's the chat? Right there. Oh, only one, I guess.
Okay. How to get past playing whack-a-mole with thoughts and emotions. It's the same way, it's like what was it you that just said it earlier, Mike, was about once you try to forget a thought, it starts coming out even more or whatever. But anyway, it's the same kind of thing. You can play it until you get tired of it. And that's the only way you will ever stop doing it, is when you truly get tired of your own means of activity. When you get tired of the ways you try to control yourself, then you start to let the world blow through a little more. And our activity with practice isn't our learning to control practice or learning to control us or learning to control life and circumstances. It's learning to half control through self-discipline, but letting the world blow through at the same time. It's a cooperative venture. It's a connection to the outside and the inside, which only works in cooperation, when half is working and half is self-discipline. So the only way, if you see this thought coming up all the time and you can't get rid of it, and the more you think of it, the more it comes out, is just watch that activity taking place. Watch it happening. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to run from it, which is really hard to do, especially if you don't like the thought. And it's very hard to get rid of it. Only way to do it is to let it die out when it's ready to go. So don't worry about activities that you do. Everything you do, as I said, is like grist for the mill. It's important. In some part of your life, that will take place in a very creative manner. Did you want something, Mike?
Yeah, it was something else I thought of was that I have to not be judgmental of my inability to control it in the way I think I should be able to control it, and let it flow through and let it do what it's going to do. And that's one of the things I'm discovering with being home and dealing with all these things is that I'm going to get angry and I'm going to say, violate some of the precepts of wrong thought and stuff like that. And to just let it flow, let it go by. And that's one of the harder things as I sit there and say, I think, I tell myself I should know better than this. And yet, I realize that in Zen, they teach you to don't do that. That's even harder sometimes.
You can do that. It's just that, again, it's the same thing. It's just you have to play it out until it runs out. If something is so important in your life that it keeps forcing its way into your consciousness, you have to let that in and wait for it to finish. And when it does, say goodbye because it's not really leaving when you don't try to repress it or when you don't throw it out in some way. It just simply burns out and loses its form as it is with you, and it's still part of you, but it's a part you can live with. So don't try to get rid of negativity like that. Just let it be there. Let's say something.
No, that's fine.
Something.
I actually I had a question that's similar about thoughts and my personal practice, if that's all right.
Sure.
So for me, I have like a really hyperactive mind. So when I try to count my breaths between the inhalation and the exhalation, I've already had thousands of images, music play, and all these things happen. And so I get frustrated because I can never get past one. So I sometimes think like, oh, do I just keep breathing as long as I don't get lost in it? Is it okay, or does it have to be completely?
Yeah, one of the guides I was talking about is the 6 perfections, and that one is generosity is the first one. I think the second one is endurance, and the third one is ethics, and so on. But every time you are in a practice, at some point you meet one of those means to get you through it. It sounds like what you're dealing with is the necessity to practice endurance. So let your hyperactive mind run itself out. It's like a wheel. It only will turn if you keep turning it, unless, if it's just natural. And so as you turn the wheel, if you turn it, it will keep spinning. But if you just sit quietly, let it do its thing, it will finally slow down. But this is a case of practicing endurance before anything else.
Alberto, how long do you sit when you're sitting by yourself?
Most of the time.
No, I mean by how many minutes? Average. Just.
Oh, about like when it's not with you guys?
Yeah.
Like 20.
Yeah, that's you have to sit if you want to have your mind be quiet, you have to sit more than that.
Okay.
You should you probably won't get any satisfaction unless you sit 40 and if not beyond.
Okay. When you guys say I'll basically allow itself to tire out essentially or burn out, during that time am I still counting on the breath, or am I just basically waiting for it to finally relax?
I would count on your breath just as a means to keep you alert.
Okay.
Because you may think that the object is to count to a certain number, but actually the method of counting is to grow up in alertness. We tend to be lax and to let things ride and to go along with things. But at some point, we have to start to actually take hold of it, and like working out a muscle, it gets strong when you do it, but it doesn't if you don't walk. Your legs just get very soft, and so when you walk, your legs will start to adjust to it. And if you count, your mind will start to adjust also, but it does take time.
Okay. So I should
Where
just
endurance
be at
comes
one.
in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Joanne?
Joanne?
Well, I was going to comment, I have the same problem. And, you know, when I was taught to meditate, I was doing like 1 on the out breath, breathing in, 2 on the out breath. But I found that at times when my mind is like really busy, I do 1 on the out breath, 2 on the in breath, 3, and so on. And that does help a little bit.
Yeah, the thing is, just keep doing it. There's also just keep noting. So every day isn't always like that, most likely, but you probably don't notice when it's more calm. So, I mean, we have days, or I have days when I come in and my mind is really turning fast. And so it's like you understand that everything is changing all the time. So when you're calm 1 minute, you can't assume that that was the result of your doing only. It can just be the result of change and the situation not being the same as before. And it could just be fatigue. It could be anything. So just observe all the conditions and count your breath, and just, and again, it's endurance. At a certain point in this practice, endurance is the big deal.
Okay.
And then you get into ethics, and that's like do not kill and all that stuff, which
Right.
is really hard to work out. Helen, hi.
Just to clarify really quickly, when you say count your breath, even when like the mind's going like 1,000,000 miles per hour, you still restart basically, right?
Yes,
So if I have a thought,
because that's how you keep your alertness present.
okay,
And that's the point when you're doing, is to bring yourself here, and not just be here, but to really be here, alert, awake, even if it's just for a moment.
I see. So the numbers are almost not important at all. It's more just I'm acknowledging.
Not important at all. It's just
Okay.
there as a means to grab hold of. So
Got
Helen, hold on. What do you,
Hi, Jane.
hi.
So
Hi, Mark.
Hi there.
I know what it means, body, speech, and mind
Yeah.
separately. But what does it mean when it's all together? Body, speech, and mind. What's that referring
you.
to? What is that?
That is you. That is yourself. Body, speech, and mind. And you define yourself by how you use all 3. And we actually create our self all the time by our thoughts, and by the things we say, and by the things we do. If you, for example, if somebody says, do you like sweets? And you say, no, I don't like sweets. You've defined yourself clearly. If you say, can you sit up all night and do zazen? And you say, no, I can't. And then you've defined yourself in very clear terms. So we do that all the time, and we create a very solid image of ourselves in our minds, not necessarily anybody else's minds. For example, we can say, I can't do this or I can't do that, but other people may observe that you actually can do it or do it on occasion. So it's your connection, or you're locked into a very strong image of who I am and what I can do and what I can't do and what I will do, etc. What happened to me in the past. It's all of our body, speech, and mind acting together to create that. And that's why we work to study the actions of body, speech, and mind in particular, and also to begin discipline of body, speech, and mind. One second. Not so much that we can control it, but that we can actually finally go past it. Not be limited by it.
So when we look at body, speech, and mind within the Eightfold Path, actually the precepts that you took 13 years probably ago, you actually there are 3 ways in which you can do things that are unbeneficial for yourself. And one way is with speech. So, for example, telling a lie or bad-mouthing others or that kind of stuff, that's speech. And some, of course, is with action, right? Killing is an action. and taking drugs is an action, and there are other things that are just part of the mind. But all those three are within the definition of body, speech, and mind. So that's one way that we deal with how we realize how we are acting. Those are the three ways that we have to act: with our mind, with our speech, and with our body.
Okay.
Anything further on that one? That one? Or Mark?
I'll let it sit.
Okay.
I mean, I had an idea of kind of what you guys are saying, but hearing it and then just letting it sink in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just had a comment / question getting back to Alberto's question / problems. And for me, at least especially when I teach meditation session, and then I'll do like a 3-minute meditation session with someone, and then they'll say to me, oh, I couldn't even get to 1 or to 2 or whatever. Well, my answer to them is, that's awesome. Because what that means is, that means that previously you were going through your life with your thoughts completely untethered, not even realizing they were happening, and just running your life nonstop. You've never even really been conscious of the fact that your thoughts are running completely without any tethering at all, just doing what they want. Well, when you start to meditate, you start to actually take notice of your thoughts, maybe for the first time. And the fact that you're only getting to 2 or 3 means that you're actually trying to, and you're doing a good job of meditating and trying to be on task. Whereas if a person tells me that they tried meditation and they got to 10 every time, I know for a fact they're not really being conscious of their thoughts. And the other thing is related to the actual, now I want to see what you guys think about this, Jane, Peter. When I'm meditating, I don't start over at 1 unless I've gone for a ride on the train. So I'm at the station and the thoughts are coming by like trains. If a thought comes into my head like, oh, I need to get my oil changed, but I continue 3, 4, and I don't get into, oh, I need to do that today, I better do that at lunch, oh, where will I go, la 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 la. If I didn't jump on the train, I keep counting. But if I suddenly find myself on the train thinking about where I'm getting my oil change and everything else, then I'm back to 1. But I'm not back to 1 just for oil change. Is that everybody's individual thing, or is that like, how does that, where are you guys on that?
I think, that anything you do that helps is, and if it works for you, that's fine. But it's like, if you think about it, for example, Alberto, if you think about the fact that you can remain alert for up to 3 seconds or 2 seconds, that's pretty amazing, because during that alertness, you're actually awake for a moment. And that awakeness will keep growing. You set something in motion that will eventually change and do it for the better. So even if you only get to 3, that's fine, or 2, that's really being there. And that's what you set in motion. And John, I think that idea is fine. As long as you're aware of what you're doing. That's the awareness is what we're developing, not skill at counting or skill at reaching levels, not even skill at managing our thoughts. It's just skill at being aware of what's going on.
But I would also say, it sounds a little bit like multitasking to me.
Wait, what seems like multitasking?
Your style.
My style of.
Well, if I don't catch it, then it doesn't exist.
Go back.
But of course, it exists.
He catches it. It's just that he doesn't think it's that important.
Well, it's not important, of course.
So you would say that traditionally, it would be the case, like if Dogen were teaching it, as soon as oil came into my head, I start over?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Dogen may not have been that rigid all the time. He may have allowed people to develop ways of their own too.
And he didn't know about oil either.
among other things. No,
Whale oil,
there is
Japan.
no limit to what we can do in this practice as far as individual ingenuity is concerned. And if it works for you, fine. But if you find you're being self-serving by using it, then you have to be careful. Or if you're being deceiving of yourself, you have to be careful. Hi, Stacy, did you want something?
Yes, John, how did you feel when you found out that you could not follow, the numbers or the thought come so many times? How were you feeling? How was your thought or what's your emotion and all that? Were you upset or were you thinking that you wanted to have like count up to 10 or something?
Oh,
Or you
no.
wished
I'm not trying to get further into the numbers or anything like that. I'm just, I don't know. I've always found it just counterproductive to constantly start again. And don't get me wrong, I can only get to like 4 or 5 or 6, even with the technique I'm talking about. So it's not like I'm talking about, it's just, for me, in the beginning, I think we all get a little frustrated or disappointed in ourselves or whatever. But for me now, that's one of the biggest things is not to. It's just to make it just start over again. No frustration, no anger, just start over.
I would say that to me in meditation, as know whatever it is, you just know it. The point is to study ourselves, right, Jen?
Yeah.
Yes, just to study ourselves, that's all that is. Just if we was frustrated, just notice and just see it. And just come back to the task. Maybe if I get upset, that, oh my God, I can't even count through 1. So just see that, this upsetting, and it might go away by itself. And then we'll come back to the task. And what I experience and what I practice. A lot of time I think so much, but sometimes I have to yell, just stop talking and start being. Being meaning feeling, have like direct experience, direct experience, whatever that might come, is all dharmas. Dharmas are boundless, right? So everything that we perceive, we just have to accept it and don't go and just make up more story or something, but it might make us, more forget our task, that what it is. Just leave everything outside and just trust direct experience, whatever that is. Lead us is all raw, it's now, and it's
Good word, by the way.
It's all good.
Did you use the word raw, Stacy?
Yes, raw. Everything is raw.
Good way to express it.
Yeah, it's just so amazing that, to me, wow. Now it's raw, it's real, it's one of a kind. It's as it is. It just, you cannot find it. It's just amazing. If we are really into the moment, for example, our breathing, just experience where the air comes through first. It might come through our nose, right? Just put the mind into that feeling, the moment, you go into that feeling, then it's go to our chest, it's go to our belly button, and then come out, go through it, just experiencing our own breathing, study our own breathing. That's only the task. That's all that is. If we don't want to count, we count. And when we get upset, that means we want something else besides counting, right? We want to have more numbers. If we count up to 10, will be good. We want something. That's why we upset. Is put, you know, if we don't want to feeling that upsetting, just let it go and just don't count our breath. It's fine. To me, sometimes I just put the task on experiencing my own breathing. I only know, oh, this is light and this is so hard. A lot of time when I breathe, try to breathe out, it's just so hard. It's tight on the left, you know, it's stuck over here, you know, it's just not easy. You know, my suffering is already in my breath, actually. That's how I know. Just follow that suffering in our breath, just suffering. Because why a lot of the time, this is my own experience. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you can just let me know too. My own experience, my own suffering, it's just here in my breathing sometimes. You know, it's not easy, you know, but my task is to just let go, because a lot of time I'm holding on to my breath. I just want to just breathe in, but don't want to breathe out. But it can, because if I can't breathe out, I get more suffering, right? It's impossible. So I need to let go sometimes. So I try to let go of my breathing. Some point I said, you know what? Just let go. Who cares? Just breathe and just see how it goes.
That's what happens when you do lose interest in your own activity, is when you do say, okay, let it go. So just breathe instead. That's what I mean by getting tired of your own activity. And when that happens, things drop down on their own.
So only counting?
Yeah, only counting is a good way. Following your breath is a good way. Doing nothing whatsoever is a good way. It's just whatever works for you.
I cheat a little bit. I'm lucky enough to have birds in the bushes outside my window where I normally meditate, so the Tao will distract me. I'll listen to the birds sing, and all of a sudden my thoughts will calm down for a little while, and then, you know, it gives me a chance to catch my breath, because I'm like, what he was saying, Alberto was saying about counting, I can think thoughts in between counts and in between breaths. And I'll get so confused by everything, and all of a sudden some bird will land outside my window and start singing this beautiful song. And I'm in the Tao all of a sudden, and then that brings me right back, and it calms me down. So I have to time my meditation when the birds are out singing, and it makes it easier for me to stay on the path.
Joanne?
Did you have
Well,
something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting observation about carrying suffering in your breath. I never really thought about that in the breath. I mean, obviously we carry suffering in the mind, but also I notice that, you know, how much I'm carrying it in my body. And, you know, when I meditate, there are times when I have to like very consciously relax particular muscles. Like I know I have like my shoulders is my right shoulder is often kind of going up towards my ear. And I notice that just going about my day. But then when I meditate, I also notice sometimes like I've just got this slight tension in, you know, in my calf or whatever. And I have to like just be conscious about relaxing it, because it will just pop up without realizing it. So I guess there's also awareness of, you know, of body too. And also I was gonna comment. So like, I guess I do something similar to what John does. Like if it's a thought that goes by and I do not engage, then, you know, I just kind of observe and continue counting. I mean, cause like, I mean, isn't that kind of part of the point is that, you know, things will come up, you observe them, and then let them
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
go on their way. Yeah.
Yes. And so as long as you don't engage it and you're aware while you're doing it. Yeah. If you pass it, as long as the state of awareness is still there and you go on to the next thing. Yeah. I think it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter what form of practice you engage in when you're sitting, because whatever works is fine as long as it's working. But if, that's what I was saying, you have to be careful against deception that you do for yourself, or just hiding without realizing that's a form of hiding. So if a thought comes up that you don't particularly like having, and so you just, quote, let it pass quickly and go on to the next one, that may not be a particularly good move at that point. So you have to figure that out. What ties you up in knots and what doesn't. And I think, Stacy, what you said is very good about your suffering is in your breath. That's definitely true. And that's one reason that we spend so much time on it. And counting is not to remove you from that breath. In fact, after you've been counting and your mind calms down, you find that even counting is too busy. And so you want to just sit there and follow your breath. And you watch it, in this case, going in your nose and down into your, I used the belly button, but I would say, Stacy, let it go all the way down into your abdomen.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you.
So anyway, the idea is to just explore this self you are that's made of body, speech, and mind. You explore your body in meditation. You explore your speech and how you talk, both in the Zendo and out. And you explore your activity by how you bow and how you act outside. And these are all governed by the precepts. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else who has not spoken like to speak? Arvin or June or Melanie, or is that Joseph, or Chris, Spencer? If you all have something to say on this subject or any other, it's fine. We need your input, because everything you share with people is like, we're that much richer for it, all of us.
And Daniel, I don't have a way to contact you. So we talked about having a Doksan rather than during the Zazenkai, but then I couldn't find your information in our book somehow. So, you know, you can send it to Peter at Beginner's Mind Zen Center, or you can send it to yozenpeter@gmail.com. But send me your stuff so I can contact you.
Are you there?
He's there.
Okay. So does anyone have anything further to say about this subject?
I will. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Melanie. Let Melanie talk.
I think it's important to try to not make it personal. Like if a person does have trouble meditating and, you know, just dealing with so many thoughts and emotions, and convinces themselves that they maybe have a problem. They have a problem meditating, and then that can lead to other thoughts like, I am somehow broken. Then it's that's the main thing I guess I wanted to add to the conversation is yeah, just be aware if you are taking it personally and drawing a conclusion about yourself based on your difficulty meditating. I did that a long time. I think I still do that. I developed an idea about myself because I don't meditate as much as, you know, I don't meditate every day. I never got into a regular routine. And, you know, it's never too late. I can just make that change now. I don't have to constantly go into the past and think about what I was doing then and how I thought about myself then, you know, so that I wanted to add.
That's a good point, Melanie. And the thing is that what you feel that comes up in meditation has actually been with you all the time outside. You just didn't notice it because you weren't sitting still, as it were. and looking, really looking for it. So keep that in mind also, is that all these things that we're seeing in meditation that come up don't come up just because we're sitting. We're seeing them come up because we're sitting, whereas they've been up all the time. Anybody else want to add something?
Yeah.
Joanne? June?
Oh,
Pardon,
yeah.
Joanne, hold on a second. Joanne.
So yeah, I really agree with what Melanie said about not judging yourself or thinking there's something wrong with you for not being able to meditate well, because really the point of meditation is that we have to let go of those thoughts about judging ourselves, and we're not sitting to gain anything, so that means we don't have to really do it well either. I think it's more about being sincere.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Right. So I also think that because we're all different personality-wise, and what we're comfortable with, all of that is different. So like what Alberto was saying, like I really had the same problem, that I couldn't go past one. Like all these thoughts will come in and my mind is very hyperactive. So I just kind of adopted the practice like what John does, that I don't stop counting unless I was completely off the chart, and like I don't even know. A lot of times when I'm completely taken over my thoughts and I don't even know what number I was counting. But as long as it wasn't to that point, I would just kind of keep counting and just kind of tell myself it's okay. It's okay that I have these thoughts come in. And as long as it goes out and I can still remember what number I was counting, I just kind of modified my practice that way to at least encourage myself to sit. And then as I continued, Jane told me to let go of the numbers. So I tried that too. I really didn't think that I could just focus on my breath, but I could do it on my good days. But I think the point is that it is okay to help yourself to encourage the practice when we're just starting to learn how to be in this mode of meditation. And also like about the regular practice that Melanie was talking about, like I had the problem with that too, because I have very hard time waking up in the morning because I usually sleep very late. So like I just couldn't get up and like get on the cushion. So what I did at first was, as soon as I wake up, I just sat on my bed, and I'm still under my blanket. I just sat on my bed and started meditating, because that wasn't as hard for me to get out of bed and, you know, brush my teeth and everything and then get on the cushion. I just couldn't really start from there. So I just started very easy and what worked for me. And then I kept doing that, and then it became easier to actually get up and sit on the floor. So maybe finding what works for us at the beginning could help us encourage. That was just my thought.
I think those are good ideas. Whatever works, whatever gets you going and keeps you from stopping, whatever lets you do it without having to be perfect in it, is whatever it is works. It's good. Anybody else? I think these are all good points. Let Joanne speak here. Joanne?
Well, I was just wondering if you could clarify, because you said something like, if you know a thought comes up that you don't like, that it might not be, I don't know, like useful to just let it pass. I'm not really clear on what you meant.
What I meant was not to hang on to something for a long time, but if you note something evokes a very strong emotional reaction in you when you see it, the chances are you probably shouldn't ignore that totally. So just look at it briefly. If it brings up other things, look at them too. And you can, I think that I would think more with June that when you're doing things, you adapt all the time in your practice rather than trying to make a perfect practice of one kind. you find what really works with you, and it can be many things. It can be ways to just avoid a judgmental mind. It can be ways to make you start to really sit when you don't want to. So anything that helps you, I think, if you're creative enough, you can find means that will really help you in it. And then when you feel strong enough, you can work on the form itself more. So the form is important, but the form is meant to encourage you, and the form is not the end in itself. The form is just to get you going. Like counting numbers is just to help you to stay present. So as long as you find something that really works for you, I think it's good.
Yeah, let me answer something up with that I mentioned about John, and that is, of course, I agree with Jane completely about, all these things are very, very relative. And if it helps you to do those things, why, to not to count that only a thought that I catch on to counts as a thought. But in a way, the basic thing is to be, as already been said today, non-judgmental. So actually, in your mind, there are not good thoughts and bad thoughts. There are not thoughts that you grasp and thoughts that you don't grasp. There are thoughts. And then also what's in your mind is no thoughts. And one of the purposes of our doing meditation is to try to experience that no thought state of mind, which we can't make ourselves experience it because we just have to not pay attention to our thoughts when that happens. So when you're evaluating your thought as being, it doesn't matter, that thought doesn't matter, but that thought does matter, and the ones that don't matter, I won't let it interfere with my counting. You're being judgmental about your thoughts, is my feeling. But once again, it really doesn't matter. But from a theoretical point of view, you should know that what you're doing also is letting yourself eat some candy.
Sorry, you're letting yourself what?
Eat some candy, which we all do.
Stacy?
I like when Joanne said that one thing that she found out that she didn't like her thought. You say that, Joanne? You said you had some point you have your thought come up and you didn't like it. I like that.
Well,
because you know about yourself. Because when you see that thought come, right? You don't like it. That means you want something else. You wish it to be a different thought. So that put more suffering in, to the body. You may experience, pain over here. As soon as, find out, as soon as you see this thought, you don't like it, what else in your body that you experience? You may, hurt over here, or your breathing might get stuck somewhere. Just come back to body experience, to what is now. The body react to that thought. The one thing, what is the desire not wanting to be here, or desire not to accept this? What it's like in the body. And you found out, I just love that point that you found out you don't like that. Happened to me too.
Well, I mean,
Oh, it is John. It is John.
Oh yeah. So I guess I mean, it's tell me if this makes sense. I mean, it's useful at least to be able to, have a thought come up, acknowledge that this is something maybe that you don't like, and kind of like shuffle it away as something maybe to look at a later point, and then and then release it. I don't know, because I mean, looking at yourself, you've got to be able to acknowledge that something has come up that is either pleasant or unpleasant to yourself.
I admire that point that you know, you acknowledge that. That means you already in the moment. You know, you are in it. You are in it. You are it. Actually.
Stacey, I'd like to say one thing here.
Yes.
1 second.
Yeah.
Is that when we're talking about counting breaths or following breaths, it sounds like it's a very cut and dried kind of activity. And that if you do A, you can get to B, and B to C if you follow it. But in this kind of practice, you start with your body and you start with your breath. And you have no idea of the extent of the thoughts and emotions that are going to come up. And once they start to, very often a single thought will bring in a whole slew from the other side of all kinds of related thoughts all at once. And you find yourself sitting swamped with these emotions and thoughts. And the best way at this point is to calm yourself first, because you can't obviously solve all these thoughts and emotions. So the first thing to do is sit and calm yourself and bring composure into it. And one way is to just count your breath, or just to sit there, do nothing, and let the whole pack sit in your lap with nothing to do. And just sit there until it wears itself out. So everything that comes in, and in the meantime, you may need to improvise some creative ways somehow to deal with this lump sums of things that come into your life. And one way to do it is following your breath, and the other way is just to do nothing whatsoever and let it sit there and wait for it to pass. And that's endurance. That's endurance again.
Thank you.
Mike has his hand up also. We both have a go.
Because of my lifestyle, I have to travel by bus to do everything, and the buses don't run that often anymore. So I find myself sitting on a bus bench for an hour sometimes, and I've been experimenting with meditating at that period because I can't get home in time to meditate when I normally do, because as soon as I get home, I got to do other things, and I live by myself, so I've got a lot of things to do. And when you're sitting in a public place and you're trying to calm yourself down and think, sometimes it almost is a real good teacher, because there's so much going on as you sit there and stuff. But I find it sometimes very a very good learning experience, because life is going on right by my eyes and stuff like this, and I'm not ignoring it, and I'm not paying attention to it. And I don't know if this is a good method to evolve my meditation practice. But since I have no other place to sit at that time, and I've got no choice but to be there, I find that sometimes I can calm myself down and just watch the world go by. And I don't know if that's considered meditation or not. But it's one of those things where it's the only time I have to actually sit in a day and clear my mind out. And I just watch the movie screen of the world going by me and stuff. Is that considered kind of like a form of meditation, or is it
well, meditation, you know, is just like bringing yourself into the present. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a cushion, and it doesn't have to be following your breath or counting your breathing. It just has to be being present, and you can do that anywhere. That's why we practice bowing, chanting, and meditation, so that your body, speech, and mind are all completely bound up in this, and practice it here. And when you go out there, you do it out there. Everywhere, whether you're standing in line in a store or getting on a bus, it doesn't matter what it is. You can't even call it meditation. You would just call it being present for a change.
John,
And it sounds like
John Deveron is next.
oh, sorry.
I just wanted to really quick, because Stacey and I and some others have had this similar conversation before, and there's been some confusion, and I just wanted to clear it up. The way that Stacey uses the word suffering is a little different than the way that oftentimes people that don't that aren't into Buddhism or haven't been into Buddhism or maybe don't understand the way that she's using the word suffering. It's not the Western way that we're using it. What she's trying to say, and I don't mean to speak for Stacey, and she can tell me if I'm wrong, but in the conversations we had before and the way she defined it, what she's saying with the breath and with the sitting and so forth is there's an expectation with the way that you're supposed to sit and you're supposed to breathe. And so what Stacy's saying is if she doesn't feel like she's breathing right, or if the breathing doesn't happen correctly, or if things don't happen the way that they were quote unquote supposed to, that's suffering. That's like the Theravadan definition of suffering, if I'm correct, is that the expectation of things don't happen the way that they're supposed to, and therefore you have mental suffering. And I think that's really what Stacy's speaking to when she's meditating, and that she, and she's talking about taking the things that we experience, the small things we experience in our meditation that bring up suffering. I'm making quotation marks, you can't see on my little, but in actuality, it's not the same kind of suffering that we think we go through in our daily lives, but it actually is on a small scale, because even those large things in our lives, like we didn't want that person to die, but they did, that large sense suffering, it really isn't any different than the breath not happening the same way. Peter, Jane, Stacy, am I correct in that definition?
I definitely agree with that. I think suffering is suffering. It's just something, whatever it is that sets you off, that makes you feel anguish of any kind. It's, yeah, is suffering.
To me, suffering is, I don't want it. That's all. Like, I don't want this. That's it.
Think of it as a catalyst that makes you look at something you wouldn't normally look at, that you would just bypass without ever thinking of it. And suffering makes you stop and look at it.
Yes, thank you. That is.
Who is the
Joseph was maybe last person, Joseph.
And Spencer, did you have anything to say too? To add your expertise to? And
no, I just appreciate that. The discussion today was what I've been going through. I was very judgmental and critical of my meditation. You guys pretty much covered that whole topic pretty well for me. So,
Spencer?
This might be tangential to the conversation, but you know, I've been sitting maybe thematically, certain topics stay in my mind, like karma and fairness. And I sit and see what comes up. And, you know, when my daughter was young, she was obsessed with fairness. And I used to tell her, life's not fair. Get used to it. Don't expect, you know, that life will be fair. But as I've gotten older, I realized that I have a sort of an attachment to fairness, or an expectation of fairness and karma. And when I sit with them, what I realize is, number one, they're concepts. So they both are affiliated with an outcome. And the affiliation to the outcome is, well, karma, if you do something wrong, you'll get your comeuppance in time or in a lifetime or whatever. And fairness, you know, similarly, you know, the golden rule. And what I realized after, you know, watching the news and looking at politics and what comes out and how things work is, you know, that there's no real karma and there is no fairness. So I have to teach myself that lesson, and that they are concepts. But that brings me to a really, you know, nihilistic place of, you know, karma doesn't exist and fairness doesn't exist. So what do you say to that?
Karma exists, definitely. But it exists when you indulge in your self nature to such a degree that you create another form of yourself in something. So karma definitely exists. If you drop something on your foot, you hurt your foot. And if you set in motion a negative wave, as it were, you feel the wave yourself, because everything is still you. So wherever you send the wave is always only touching you. So karma is just that whatever you set in motion remains with the setter of the motion. That's how I see it.
So,
and it's the ego that sets it in motion.
So with the karmic part, you know, I've thought about that and cause and effect, and you know, there's an action and a reaction, and You know, in the moment, there's an immediacy to that. And if you do something, there'll be a reaction. But, you know, long-term karma, you expect things to happen that don't happen. And that's an attachment, and that causes suffering. I get that. But, you know, longer term karma, if somebody has a life of good deed, I don't necessarily see them rewarded. And I see people just manipulate and use other people. And it seems like, you know, that there's no affiliation there. So, yeah, karma in the terms of physics or in, you know, in terms of cause and effect, yeah, I agree that it happens. In terms of life and the nuance of action, you know, I just think it's a concept.
No,
It seems to me like it's a Spencer way of thinking.
No, I don't think
And it could be. So
I
I'm
don't think
trying
it's
to work
a
that
concept,
out.
Spencer, because it's what we ourselves set in motion. And if you look and see the world and it looks unfair, and somebody who spends their whole life doing good and has nothing but bad effects in their life, like illnesses and things that seem to destroy them, first of all, you can't see what another person's life is from the inside unless you get in there with them. But the effects that we set in motion, like the difficult problems that we'll have now, or whatever they are, we've set them in motion, not necessarily 5 minutes ago, but maybe 50 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 5 years ago. And we maintain that by reaction, but we don't have to. We can choose to let karma meet us and do nothing. And that can be whether you're sitting and a bundle of negative emotions sits in your lap, or it can be a meeting of miserable circumstance somewhere. So that all we can do is, not all we can do, what we can do is nullify the karma that comes our way. We don't have to accept it or react to it. We just simply let it go, just as we would any thought, and go on with our life as we can, acting with purpose in every situation. Arvin.
So sorry, just kind of keying on that. A couple of days ago, I was walking out, towards the hills, and this guy in a big truck comes by. He's got a big, huge American flag in the back, and he just starts yelling at me, and I have no idea why. So I start yelling back at him. I flip him off, and
there's the action.
So, and I feel like, so what's that, then afterwards I started thinking, okay, maybe I did the wrong thing. Maybe I should have just ignored him and kept walking or turned around or whatnot. But, what's the karmic thing to do here?
Let it pass, as you would a negative thought, because you react to it. You've set it in motion somewhere else, or coming back, or whatever. So just when you see this kind of activity, let it pass, as you would in Zazen. That's why you sit on the cushion, so you practice.
But here's the thing. But I think here's what Spencer was trying to say. That's like, you let it pass now, and then it's going to come back to someone else down the street again later.
Perhaps.
So you have to confront it, right? You can't let it pass.
So. I don't think confronting, at least what you described, didn't solve anything. There may be better ways to deal with it, but as far as letting it throw your world in a mess, you can just figure out how you can work against that. You can't confront that kind of thing immediately, because all you do is have an equal and opposite reaction. So the best thing to do is figure out ways to work against any kind of bigotry or whatever.
Yeah, the demon wants you to be a demon and fight back.
Join the party.
you just happen to have this situation of a demon went by.
Yeah, just
ignore the demon.
Don't get
in that situation. Each situation is different.
Yeah.
But in fact, if you're thinking about, I don't react, the guy down the road will react, will be hurt. In that case, by flipping him off, of course,
They may have been twice
he
as angry.
he gets more angry, and he's going to do it even more. There's one important thing from my point of view about karma, and karma only makes sense when it's only about you.
Yeah.
Any place where we're trying to think about karma as being the universal justice system, it doesn't work. Doesn't work. And it's not important. But everybody has their own world. It's the whole universe. Your world that you live with is the whole universe. And you ultimately have control, not of the fact that there are demons elsewhere, but you have that control of dealing with it in your life. Everything else doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As far as karma goes. Karma is only a system for looking at your own life.
I really enjoy that viewpoint, Peter. It's very kind of stoic. It resonated with me a lot. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't think of that as stoic so much as practical. If a ball comes at you and you hit it against the wall, it will come back you twice as hard. You know, it's just you learn how to deal with it in a better way. So if your object is to go out and work for other people and try to change social situations, then you should find ways to do that work for you. But to have individual confrontation, I don't think solves anything. And the world feel terrible.
I meant Stoic as like the ancient philosophy, not like in regular terms. The ancient, their whole thing is that you can only deal with your sphere of control, which is yourself.
Well,
And
it's like I was taking it as you meant it as endurance, and that's those 6 prajna-paramitas. And in this case, you look and see which one works. Generosity is like not returning it. Endurance maybe isn't a good way. Patience is maybe necessary. Wisdom is probably the most important one to use in this case. What is the best way to deal with this?